find your seat, wherever you happen to be and whatever your seat looks like under the circumstances, and take a moment to settle in. Make the adjustments to your posture that you need to make in order to be sitting just a little bit more balanced and just a little bit more attentively than you were. You might take a few purposeful, deep breaths. And when you are ready, let's get to work. We are going to start this practice with eyes open. So if your eyes were closed, open them and bring your attention to your visual field, such as it may be. Realize that whatever your visual field may contain, whether it be a sight of your living room or the bus or the park you're sitting in, there is seeing going on, and your visual field is automatically full of everything there is being seen. See if you can assume a gaze that is a bit more passive and receptive rather than reaching and grabbing and focusing. Trying to find the edges of your eyes from left to right and seeing both ends at the same time tends to facilitate this. And simply allow your visual attention to receive the images of the world around you from this panoramic receptive gaze for a moment. And then you might let your visual attention wander. And it will naturally wander from object to object, back into the panoramic gaze, and then to another object, and then another object, and then a different part of the same object, and so on. You might even do the experiment of keeping your eyes fixed and unmoving and realize that even then your visual attention shuffles about through the entirety of the visual field. Each of these movements is an instance of seeing. Regardless of what it is that is being seen, seeing is going on, and now this seeing is being known. Simply sit and follow your visual attention for a little bit, noting each moment of seeing as a moment of seeing. And now, if it is possible for you, pick an object somewhere in your middle distance to focus on. And if there isn't such an object available, you might, without changing your posture, bring your hand up to eye level and an arm's distance away and focus on it. And if you happen to not have hands available, you're just gonna have to get creative. And now, assuming that you are looking at an object or at your hand, I want you to appreciate it as foreground to the background around it and behind it. Notice that your visual field is now in a more focused state, but it still wanders. And to a very large extent, remaining focused on the object or on your hand is really a matter of constantly bringing your attention back from all of the wanderings in your peripheral vision and all of the objects and seeings therein. And now, still focusing on your object or on your hand, I want you to bring up a mental image, say of your keys, or if that's too complicated, of a banana, or if that's too triggering, of an orange. This doesn't have to be a very good mental image in the sense of being magically vivid and almost real. In fact, it will more likely than not be very, very vague and even unfinished and moving, but there will be something there, something that you can actually see, almost superimposed and overlaid over your object or your hand. In fact, the two things, your chosen object or hand, and the murky, changing, shifting, or, as the case may be, vivid and stable visual image of an orange, are going to exist in the same space, the space of seeing. You can put your hand down now, or uncouple from the object you were focusing on, but allow the mental images that have arisen to remain and to do their thing. These mental images will probably no longer contain an orange or whatever you started off with, but there will be images there. Other fruit, other things, rooms, places, people you've never met, memories, unrelated things, images of the things that you hear from the world around you, such as traffic, dogs, images related to those images unrelated to the images those images were related to, and so on. And all of this will exist, more or less vividly, depending on how you focus, within the same visual field as the seeing of the world around you, whether that be your living room or the park, the bus, the office, or wherever you may be set. Take a moment to truly appreciate this. This is seeing. This is what the world looks like for you. From a subjective point of view, this is what the inside of your head looks like. All of this, all at once. And now realize that just as the movements of your visual attention across the physical objects in the world around you constitutes moments of seeing, so does the movement of your visual attention across the different mental images. In fact, your visual attention will probably do a sort of an inside-outside dance. And so your visual attention might move from the chair to the table, to the bottle on the table, to the image of the breakfast you might have had, to the image of the person you shared it with, to the image of the dinner that you're yet to prepare, to the image of your desk where you still have some work to do, and so on. Each of these is a moment of seeing. Of course, some of them are external seeings and others are internal seeings, but they are all seeings. And this seeing is being known. And so your job for the next couple of minutes, and the main job of this practice, is to attend to your space of seeing as a whole, the inside and the outside. To facilitate this, we are going to note and label instances of seeing. When you notice that your attention has landed on external vision, such as seeing of a park bench if you happen to be sitting in a park, or seeing of your desktop if you happen to be in the office, you're going to note this, by which I mean concentrate on that image as clearly as you can. And to facilitate this, you're going to label it as seeing. And when you notice that your visual attention has become preoccupied by mental imagery or internal seeing, such as of a place that you walked by this morning, or memories of a holiday that you went on 10 years ago, you're going to note this, by which I mean concentrate as clearly as you possibly can on that mental image. Make it clear, even for a fleeting moment, and you're going to label it seeing. Let it go and move on. If you're in a position to do so, you're going to say your labels out loud. This really helps in the practice. If, of course, you cannot do this, then use your inside voice. You're going to keep a constant pace of noting and labeling, not too fast, but not too slow. One noting every couple of seconds or one noting every breath can work quite well. Just find a pace that works for you and keep it constant. And you're going to keep your tone level and non-reactive. I will demonstrate really quickly what that might sound like based on my experience of where I'm set and the inside of my head, as it were. And then you can take over when you're ready. Seeing. Seeing. seeing, 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 seeing. Remember that noting is not simply a matter of noticing. Noting requires that you concentrate with as much clarity as you can bear on the momentary appearance that you are attending to, whether that be an external or an internal image. When you're ready, off you go. Notice the tendency of your mind to wander into other spaces of sensory input, such as hearing of the world around you, or hearing of mental talk, or feeling of physical or emotional body sensations. You might find that things you see in the world around you provoke thoughts. You might also find that the things that you hear provoke mental images. You might find that some mental images provoke emotional body sensations, some nice, others not so nice. This intertwining of the streams of sensory input is normal and ongoing. But where concentration and clarity come into play is in noticing it and being able to tease things apart, such that you can direct your attention where it needs to go, which in this case happens to be your space of seeing, of both external vision and internal mental images. Keep going. It might be somewhat surprising, given that we've all been walking around the world fairly successfully up to now, but a big part of training clarity is in being able to discern between external and internal mental images in the moment, or more specifically, being able to discern where it is that our attention is dominantly residing for the moment. And so if in the course of practice you find yourself with both external and internal imagery active, or sort of overlapping, simply choose one on which to focus. Make sure you are clear about where that is, inside or outside. Note and concentrate on that image, label it, and move on. How you make the choice, whether it happens spontaneously or through a prolonged debate with yourself, is not actually relevant for our purposes. In fact, most of that is in the realm of hearing mental talk. In this practice, we are interested only in our visual attention. Keep going. a little bit longer. Hopefully, this practice will begin to make it apparent directly that our experience of seeing is not as simple and straightforward as we may have thought. And I don't mean this simply in the sense a photographer or a visual artist sees the world differently, although that is part of it. But what I mean is that there's a whole lot more going on in your space of seeing than just the visions of the world around you. In fact, while we tend to think that we go about the world seeing it as it is, it will become clear through this training that we actually see the world through a sort of a filter, a visual filter of mental imagery. And even though for the moment we are not interested in the content of this mental imagery, it is probably quite clear that this is very, very important. The mental imagery that arises changes the way we see things. Sometimes quite literally. We mistake one person for another, one thing for something else, a facial expression for something it wasn't. And this in and of itself is not a problem. Where we do tend to run into problems is in not being aware of it. And we are not aware of it simply because we have not trained our attention to notice. That is what we're doing here. You have done a fair bit of work in this practice, so take the last minute to simply do nothing. You may close your eyes, thereby reducing the amount of external visual imagery coming to you, but not removing it entirely. You can still very much see the backs of your eyelids and all sorts of goings on there, but it may be a bit more restful. And then drop your efforts. Don't track what your visual attention does, at least not purposefully. Don't note, don't label. Simply sit and be for a moment. Remember that this is training, specifically training for your concentration, for your skills of clarity and equanimity. In short, it is training of your focus. I'm not suggesting that you should go about your life noting and labeling external and external seeings all the time. You will be doing a lot of work, although if this comes natural to you, by all means. But it is important to realize clearly that at any given time you're seeing a lot more than just the objects in your visual field. It is also important to learn to realize in real time, moment by moment, where it is that your attention is going. Mind where your mind goes, as they say. In this case, we are interested in being attentive to and mindful of whether our mind is leaning more towards external imagery or more towards internal mental imagery. There are times in day-to-day life where one is more appropriate, more useful, more effective, and altogether more wise and wholesome than the other. In many cases, unnoticed preoccupation with one will result in distractions from the other. There are situations where we really want to be focused on external mental imagery at the expense of the arisings in the internal landscape of our visual attention, such as when driving, perhaps. Conversely, there are cases where we want our attention to be focused on our internal mental imagery. There may be rarer cases, but they're usually quite important. And in that context, visual imagery from the world around can be a distraction. In any case, you might want to do this practice several times. You might want to do it often. You might even spend a month doing just this, or some version of it that works for you. Remember that noting is where it's at, and labeling facilitates noting. And you might also want to take this practice with you into your day. In fact, this is a fun practice to do in movement while you're walking. We will formally be working on doing all of this in movement at a later stage, but if you're up for it, see if you can take this frame of attention for a spin down the street. Might be quite fun. Might even be surprised at how you've gone about life not walking into things all the time, but then again, of course you wouldn't walk into things. This is just what your mind is like. It accommodates. Anyway, have fun with it, and we will build from here.